The people who effortlessly achieve their goals and maintain powerful habits know something that the rest of us are missing. It's not what you think, and it's definitely not what they teach in self-help books. What if I told you that everything you've been told about willpower, motivation, and forcing yourself to do things is not just wrong, but actually keeping you trapped in cycles of starting and stopping? Stay with me, because this changes everything you've been taught about self-discipline and what it really takes to become the kind of person who naturally follows through on their commitments. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share a principle so counterintuitive that most people dismiss it, yet so powerful that it's responsible for every sustained achievement in human history. You've probably tried building discipline through sheer force of will, creating elaborate systems, or waiting for the perfect moment when you finally feel motivated enough to change. But what I'm about to reveal isn't about forcing yourself to do anything. It's about understanding how true discipline emerges naturally when you align with certain fundamental principles that work with your psychology rather than against it. The truth is, you don't need more willpower. You don't need to become a different type of person. You just need to understand that unshakable self-discipline isn't about control. It's about creating the conditions where the right actions become inevitable. And once you see how this works, you'll never struggle with consistency the same way again. Deep problem recognition. Have you ever noticed how the harder you try to force yourself to be disciplined, the more you seem to rebel against your own best intentions? There's something happening behind the surface that most of us miss because we're focused on trying to overcome our resistance instead of understanding why it exists. Picture this. It's Monday morning, and you've decided this is the week everything changes. You've set your alarm earlier, planned your workouts, organized your meals, and committed to a new routine that's going to transform your life. You feel motivated, determined, ready to prove to yourself that you can be disciplined. For the first few days, you're running on motivation and novelty. You wake up early, stick to your plan, feel proud of your progress. But then, somewhere around day 4 or 5, something shifts. The alarm feels more difficult to answer, the workout feels like a burden, the healthy meal feels like deprivation. The resistance starts to build. By the end of the week, you've missed a few workouts, grabbed convenience food instead of preparing what you planned, and started telling yourself that you'll get back on track next week. Sound familiar? You begin to wonder if you just don't have what it takes, if some people are naturally disciplined while others, like you, are destined to struggle with consistency. I understand why this happens, and it has nothing to do with your character or your willpower. We've been conditioned to believe that self-discipline is about overcoming our natural impulses, fighting against our desires, and forcing ourselves to do things we don't want to do. But this approach creates an internal war that's exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. Here's what's really happening when you try to force discipline. You're working against your brain's fundamental design. Your brain is wired to conserve energy, seek pleasure, and avoid pain. When you try to impose discipline through force, you're essentially declaring war on your own nervous system. And in any war between your conscious intentions and your unconscious programming usually wins. Think about a river trying to flow uphill. No matter how much force you apply, water naturally wants to flow downhill. You can temporarily push it upward, but the moment you stop applying force, it will rush back to its natural path. Most approaches to self-discipline are like trying to push water uphill. They require constant force and inevitably fail when that force is removed. Yet, we live in a culture that glorifies this kind of forced discipline. We celebrate stories of people who wake up at 4 a.m., work 18-hour days, and sacrifice everything for their goals. We've forgotten that sustainable discipline doesn't feel like a struggle. It feels like a natural expression of who you are and what you value. The real problem isn't that you lack discipline. The real problem is that you've been trying to build discipline using methods that work against your natural psychology instead of with it. You've been trying to become someone you're not instead of creating conditions where your authentic self naturally makes disciplined choices. Most people fail at self-discipline not because they're weak or lazy, but because they don't understand that true discipline emerges from alignment, not force. It comes from creating internal and external conditions where the right choices become easier than the wrong ones, where following through feels better than giving up, where consistency becomes a natural expression of your identity rather than a constant battle against your impulses. Wisdom through story. Let me tell you about Marcus, a 38-year-old architect who had struggled with consistency his entire adult life. He was brilliant at his work, creative and insightful, but when it came to personal goals, fitness, side projects, learning new skills, he was the king of starting strong and fading fast. Marcus had tried everything. He'd joined expensive gyms and hired personal trainers. He'd bought courses on productivity and time management. He'd created elaborate reward systems and accountability partnerships. Nothing worked for more than a few weeks. Each failure reinforced his belief that he simply wasn't a disciplined person. The turning point came when Marcus started working with an older contractor named Roberto on a restoration project. Roberto was in his 60s but had the energy and focus of someone half his age. He consistently arrived early, worked with steady intensity throughout the day, and seemed to genuinely enjoy even the most tedious aspects of the job. Marcus was fascinated. During their lunch breaks, he started asking Roberto about his approach to work in life. He expected to hear about strict routines, rigid self-control, or some special motivational technique. Instead, Roberto shared something that completely changed Marcus's understanding of discipline.
When I was younger, Roberto said, I thought discipline meant forcing myself to do things I didn't want to do. I would set these big goals and try to power through with willpower, but I was miserable and I always burned out. What changed? Marcus asked. Roberto smiled. I stopped trying to discipline myself and started designing my life so that the right choices became automatic. Instead of forcing myself to wake up early, I started going to bed at a time that made early rising natural. Instead of forcing myself to eat healthy, I stopped buying junk food and filled my kitchen with foods I actually enjoyed that happened to be good for me. Roberto explained that he had discovered something profound. Discipline isn't about overcoming your impulses, it's about aligning your impulses with your goals. I don't have to force myself to do my work well, he said. I genuinely love creating beautiful spaces. I don't have to force myself to stay in shape. I found physical activities that I actually enjoy. The discipline looks effortless from the outside because it is effortless from the inside. This conversation planted a seed in Marcus's mind. What if his repeated failures weren't evidence of weakness, but evidence that he was using the wrong approach? What if discipline wasn't supposed to feel like a constant struggle? Marcus started experimenting with Roberto's philosophy. Instead of forcing himself to go to the gym, he found physical activities he actually enjoyed, rock climbing and hiking. Instead of trying to force himself to work on side projects late at night when he was tired, he shifted his creative work to early mornings when his energy was naturally high. Most importantly, Marcus stopped trying to become a disciplined person and started becoming someone whose values and daily choices were naturally aligned. He didn't force himself to eat healthy, he slowly educated himself about nutrition until he genuinely wanted to fuel his body well. He didn't force himself to save money, he clarified his financial goals until spending wisely felt like self-care rather than self-denial. The transformation wasn't immediate or dramatic. In fact, from the outside, it looked like Marcus was doing less, not more. He wasn't following extreme routines or pushing himself to exhaustion, but what was happening internally was profound. His actions were beginning to emerge from genuine desire rather than forced discipline. 6 months later, Marcus realized he had achieved more consistency in all areas of his life than ever before, but it didn't feel like an achievement. It felt like a natural expression of who he had become. He woke up early because he loved his morning routine, not because he forced himself to. He exercised regularly because movement felt good, not because he guilted himself into it. He worked on creative projects because they energized him, not because he should. Roberto had shown Marcus that unshakable self-discipline isn't about becoming harder on yourself, it's about becoming more aligned with yourself. It's not about forcing actions that feel unnatural, it's about creating conditions where natural actions serve your highest goals. This story reveals the counterintuitive truth about discipline. The more effortless it feels, the more sustainable it becomes. When your disciplined actions emerge from internal alignment rather than external force, they become as natural and reliable as breathing.
The counterintuitive truth. Here's what transforms everything about self-discipline. It's not about controlling your behavior. It's about designing conditions where your desired behavior becomes the natural choice. True discipline feels effortless because it emerges from alignment, not force. Most people think discipline means doing things you don't want to do through sheer willpower. But this approach is fundamentally flawed because willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. Even people with seemingly unlimited self-control aren't relying on willpower. They've created systems and conditions that make disciplined choices automatic. Think about brushing your teeth. You probably don't need willpower to maintain this habit because it's become automatic, supported by environmental cues, social expectations, and personal identity. You don't wake up each morning and force yourself to brush your teeth. You just do it because it's part of who you are and how your day naturally flows. While most people try to build discipline by increasing their willpower, true mastery comes from decreasing the willpower required for right action. This happens when you align your environment, identity, and daily rhythms with your desired outcomes. Here's the profound shift. Instead of asking, "How can I force myself to do this?" start asking, "How can I make this the easiest choice?" Instead of relying on motivation to push you toward your goals, create conditions that naturally pull you toward them. Consider how water finds its way to the ocean. It doesn't struggle or force its path, it simply follows the natural channels and slopes of the landscape. When you build discipline through alignment rather than force, your actions follow the same principle. They flow naturally toward your goals because you've created the right channels and slopes in your life. This is why people with unshakable discipline often seem to have some special gift or unusual willpower. They don't. They've simply learned to work with their psychology rather than against it. They've discovered that sustainable discipline emerges when you stop trying to control yourself and start designing yourself. The most disciplined people understand that behavior change is much easier when you change the context that drives the behavior. They know that environment design is more powerful than willpower, that identity alignment is more sustainable than forced action, and that intrinsic motivation is more reliable than external pressure. This approach to discipline feels almost too simple because we've been conditioned to believe that meaningful change requires struggle and sacrifice. But the truth is that struggle often indicates misalignment, not virtue. When you're truly aligned with your goals, when they emerge from your authentic values and are supported by smart design, discipline becomes a natural expression of who you are rather than a constant battle against who you're not. The 4 foundations. Foundation 1, identity alignment. The first foundation is recognizing that sustainable discipline emerges from identity, not willpower. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. When your desired behaviors align with your identity, they require much less conscious effort to maintain. Start by focusing on who you want to be rather than what you want to achieve. Instead of saying, "I want to lose weight," say, "I want to become someone who takes care of their body." Instead of, "I want to save money," say, "I want to become financially responsible." This shift changes your relationship with the required actions from external obligations to internal expressions. Practice identity-based thinking in small moments throughout your day. Before making decisions, ask yourself, what would someone with my desired identity do in this situation? Then make that choice, regardless of how you feel in the moment. These small identity-aligned choices accumulate into powerful behavioral patterns. Create evidence for your desired identity through small, consistent actions. If you want to become a reader, read 1 page daily. If you want to become organized, make your bed each morning. If you want to become healthy, drink 1 extra glass of water. These micro actions reinforce your identity and make larger behaviors feel natural. Notice how your current identity might be working against your goals. If you see yourself as not a morning person, you'll unconsciously resist waking up early. If you identify as not good with money, you'll struggle with financial discipline. Gently begin shifting these identity stories toward versions that support your desired behaviors. Foundation 2. Environmental design. The second foundation is creating environments that make good choices easier and bad choices harder. Your environment shapes your behavior more than your willpower, so designing it strategically removes the need for constant decision-making. Optimize your physical spaces to support your goals. If you want to exercise more, lay out your workout clothes the night before. If you want to eat healthier, stock your kitchen with nutritious foods and remove tempting junk. If you want to read more, put books in visible places and remove distracting devices from your bedroom. Design your digital environment to support focus and positive habits. Use apps that block distracting websites during work hours. Set up your phone to display apps that serve your goals on the home screen while hiding apps that waste time. Create digital reminders and cues that prompt desired behaviors throughout the day. Structure your social environment to reinforce disciplined choices. Spend time with people who model the behaviors you want to adopt. Join communities or groups focused on your goals. Share your commitments with supportive friends who will encourage your growth rather than sabotage it. Create friction for unwanted behaviors and remove friction for desired ones. Make it harder to access things that derail your discipline while making it easier to access things that support it. This might mean keeping your phone in another room while working or preparing healthy snacks in advance so they're readily available. Foundation 3. Natural rhythms. The third foundation is working with your natural energy patterns and biological rhythms rather than fighting against them. Everyone has times when discipline feels easier and times when it feels harder. The key is scheduling important actions during your natural high-energy periods. Track your energy levels throughout the day for several weeks. Notice when you feel most focused, creative, and motivated. Notice when you naturally feel like exercising, when your willpower is strongest, and when you're most likely to make good decisions. Use this information to schedule your most important discipline behaviors during these optimal windows. Recognize that discipline isn't about maintaining constant intensity. It's about sustainable rhythms that honor both your need for action and your need for rest. Plan recovery periods and easier days rather than trying to maintain peak performance indefinitely. Align your most challenging discipline behaviors with your natural strengths and preferences. If you're naturally more focused in the morning, do your most important work then. If you're energized by social interaction, find ways to make your goals social. If you prefer routine, create consistent patterns rather than constantly changing your approach. Accept that your discipline will naturally fluctuate with life circumstances, stress levels, and seasonal changes. Instead of judging these fluctuations, plan for them. Have lighter versions of your habits for difficult periods and more intensive versions for times when you're feeling strong. Foundation 4. Intrinsic motivation. The fourth foundation is connecting your disciplined behaviors to deeper values and intrinsic rewards rather than relying on external motivation or punishment. Behaviors driven by internal motivation are much more sustainable than those driven by external pressure. Clarify the deeper reasons behind your disciplinary goals. Instead of wanting to exercise just to look good, connect it to feeling energetic and capable. Instead of saving money just to have more, connect it to feeling secure and free to make choices based on values rather than financial pressure. Focus on the immediate benefits of disciplined behavior rather than just long-term outcomes. Notice how good choices make you feel right now. The energy from healthy food, the satisfaction of completed tasks, the peace of mind from organized spaces. These immediate positive feelings reinforce the behavior more powerfully than distant future rewards. Find ways to make your disciplined behaviors inherently enjoyable rather than just instrumental to achieving goals. Listen to podcasts while exercising, make healthy meals that taste great, or turn routine tasks into mindfulness practices. When the activity itself is rewarding, discipline becomes sustainable. Celebrate small wins and progress rather than waiting for major achievements. Acknowledge yourself for showing up, for making good choices, for maintaining consistency even when results aren't immediately visible. This internal recognition builds motivation and reinforces your identity as someone who follows through. The science of sustainable change. Understanding the psychological and neurological mechanisms behind habit formation and behavior change helps you work with your brain rather than against it when building discipline. Habit loop mastery. Every habit follows a simple loop: cue, routine, reward. Unshakable discipline emerges when you understand how to design and optimize each part of this loop for your desired behaviors. Identify clear, consistent cues for your disciplined behaviors. These might be specific times, locations, preceding actions, or emotional states. The more specific and consistent your cues, the more automatic your responses become. If you want to meditate daily, choose the same time and place each day so your brain learns to associate these cues with the behavior. Focus on making the routine as simple and enjoyable as possible, especially when you're building a new habit. Start with versions that are almost ridiculously easy: 1 push-up, 1 page of reading, 1 minute of meditation. This removes resistance and allows the neural pathway to strengthen without overwhelming your motivation.
Design meaningful rewards that reinforce your desired identity. These don't have to be external treats. Often the most powerful rewards are internal recognition, feelings of accomplishment, or simple acknowledgments of progress. The key is ensuring that the reward reinforces the identity you're building rather than undermining it. Willpower conservation. Since willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day, unshakable discipline requires strategies that minimize willpower usage rather than maximize willpower strength. Make important decisions when your willpower is strongest, typically earlier in the day. Use this peak decision-making time to set yourself up for success later when your willpower might be lower. Prepare meals, lay out clothes, organize your workspace, and plan your schedule during high-energy periods. Reduce decision fatigue by creating routines and systems that automate choices. Eat similar healthy breakfasts, follow consistent morning routines, and establish standard responses to common situations. The fewer decisions you have to make throughout the day, the more willpower you have available for truly important choices. Restore willpower through rest, nutrition, and stress management. Discipline becomes much easier when you're well-rested, properly nourished, and not overwhelmed by stress. Prioritize sleep, eat regular meals, and manage your stress levels as foundational elements of sustainable discipline. Progressive development. Discipline is like a muscle that grows stronger with consistent practice, but only when that practice is appropriately challenging and includes adequate recovery. Start with behaviors that feel achievable and gradually increase difficulty over time. If you want to exercise for an hour daily, start with 10 minutes and add time gradually as the habit becomes automatic. This progressive approach builds confidence and prevents the overwhelm that leads to giving up. Focus on consistency over intensity, especially in the beginning. It's better to do something small every day than something big sporadically. Your brain learns patterns through repetition, so frequent small actions create stronger neural pathways than infrequent large ones. Expect and plan for setbacks as part of the development process. Missing a day or making a poor choice doesn't negate your progress. It's information about what conditions support your success and which ones challenge it. Use setbacks as learning opportunities rather than evidence of failure. Advanced discipline strategies. Once you've established the foundations, these advanced strategies can help you develop truly unshakable self-discipline that adapts to changing circumstances and continues to grow over time. Systems thinking. Approach discipline as a system of interconnected behaviors rather than isolated actions. Understanding how different areas of your life affect each other allows you to create reinforcing loops that make discipline easier across all domains. Recognize keystone habits, behaviors that naturally trigger other positive behaviors. Exercise often improves nutrition, sleep, and productivity. Meditation frequently enhances emotional regulation, focus, and decision-making. Financial discipline often spills over into other areas of organization and planning. Create positive feedback loops where success in one area reinforces success in others. When you exercise, you feel more energetic for work.
When you work productively, you feel more motivated to maintain other healthy habits. When you save money, you feel more empowered to make other positive life changes.
Design backup systems for when your primary discipline strategies are challenged. Have simpler versions of your habits for busy periods, alternative activities for when your preferred options aren't available, and recovery protocols for when you inevitably have off days. Emotional regulation. Sustainable discipline requires the ability to take right action regardless of emotional state. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but rather developing the skill to act according to your values even when you don't feel like it. Practice the pause between impulse and action. When you feel resistance to doing something you've committed to, take a few conscious breaths before deciding. Often, the resistance is temporary and will pass if you don't immediately react to it. Develop emotional awareness around your discipline challenges. Notice what emotions tend to derail your consistency: boredom, stress, frustration, sadness, and create specific strategies for maintaining your commitments during these emotional states. Use emotions as information rather than instruction. Feeling unmotivated doesn't mean you shouldn't take action. It might mean you need to adjust your approach, address underlying stress, or simply move forward despite the feeling. Identity evolution. As you develop discipline, your identity naturally evolves. Supporting this evolution consciously accelerates your growth and makes advanced levels of discipline feel natural rather than forced. Notice how your self-talk and internal narrative change as you become more consistent. Celebrate these identity shifts, from "I'm trying to be healthier" to "I'm someone who takes care of my body," or from "I'm working on being more organized" to "I'm an organized person." Gradually take on challenges that stretch your identity in positive directions. As you become comfortable with basic discipline, consider what the next level of your identity might look like and what behaviors would support that evolution. Surround yourself with people who see and reinforce your growing identity. Spend time with others who are also committed to growth and discipline. Their expectations and support will help reinforce your new identity and make advanced behaviors feel normal. Integration and mastery. The ultimate goal isn't just to build discipline in isolated areas, but to develop an integrated approach to life where discipline choices become your natural default across all domains. Holistic balance. True discipline includes knowing when not to be disciplined, when to rest, when to be spontaneous, when to prioritize relationships over productivity. Unshakable discipline is flexible and responsive to life's changing demands. Create rhythms that include both structure and freedom. Plan intensive periods of focused effort followed by times of rest and spontaneity. This prevents burnout and keeps your discipline sustainable over the long term. Recognize that discipline in service of what matters most sometimes means being undisciplined about things that matter less. You might be incredibly consistent with exercise and nutrition while being more relaxed about keeping a perfectly organized home. Continuous refinement. Discipline is not a destination, but a practice that continues to evolve throughout your life. Stay curious about what works, what doesn't, and how you can continue to refine your approach. Regularly review and adjust your systems based on what you learn about yourself. Your optimal approaches to discipline will change as your life circumstances, responsibilities, and priorities evolve. Stay open to new strategies and approaches rather than becoming rigid about methods that have worked in the past. What serves you in one phase of life might need to be adapted for another. Teaching and modeling. One of the most powerful ways to reinforce your own discipline is to model it for others and support their development. When you help others build discipline, you deepen your own understanding and commitment. Share your strategies and insights with others who are working on similar goals. Teaching forces you to articulate what you've learned and often reveals aspects of your approach that you can refine. Model sustainable discipline rather than forcing or grinding. Show others that discipline can feel good, that it can emerge from alignment rather than force, and that it's available to anyone willing to work with their psychology rather than against it. The journey of building unshakable self-discipline is ultimately a journey of coming into alignment with your highest self.
It's not about becoming someone you're not, but about creating conditions where your best self emerges naturally and consistently. When discipline becomes an expression of who you are rather than something you have to do, it transforms from a burden into a gift. You discover that consistency isn't about perfection. It's about returning to your values and commitments again and again, regardless of circumstances. This kind of discipline doesn't make you rigid or controlled. Instead, it gives you the freedom to live according to your deepest values, to create the life you actually want rather than settling for what happens by default. It becomes the foundation for everything else you want to build in your life. Your unshakable discipline is waiting to emerge, not through force or willpower, but through the wisdom of alignment, the power of design, and the patience of sustainable growth. The question isn't whether you're capable of discipline, you absolutely are. The question is whether you're ready to stop fighting yourself and start working with yourself to create the life you truly want.